The morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet training grounds of Sierra K9 Academy, nestled in the remote hills of southern Arizona. The sprawling facility, with its specialized obstacle courses and training zones, seemed peaceful as the first light touched the chain-link fences and weathered wooden structures. Everything appeared normal until the silence was suddenly shattered by the screech of tires on gravel, and the calm morning erupted into chaos as three black SUVs burst through the main gate, leaving twisted metal in their wake. Dust clouds billowed behind the vehicles as they thundered down the facility's main path, their engines roaring with menacing intent. Inside the main training building, former Marine Corps veteran and elite K9 handler Marcus "Shadow" Rodriguez was conducting his morning briefing with his team of specialized trainers. The room fell silent as the sound of the approaching vehicles reached their ears. Through the window they could see the dust trail growing closer, and something in Marcus's gut told him this wasn't a scheduled visit. The training facility was an impressive operation, spanning over 50 acres of carefully designed terrain. Various buildings dotted the landscape, each serving a specific purpose in the development of highly trained security and police dogs. The main structure, a converted ranch house, stood as the centerpiece of the operation, its walls lined with photographs of graduated K9 teams and certificates of excellence. Behind it lay the kennels, home to some of the most sophisticated military-grade working dogs in the country. Marcus moved swiftly to the window, his movements calculated and precise, a habit ingrained from years of combat experience. His hand instinctively reached for his phone as he observed the approaching threat. The vehicles were tactical grade, modified for high-speed pursuit and equipped with reinforced bumpers. This was no ordinary intrusion. These people came prepared and with purpose. In the kennels behind the main building, the facility's pride and joy, 12 expertly trained Belgian Malinois and German Shepherds began to stir. These weren't ordinary security dogs. They were the product of years of specialized training, capable of complex tactical operations and trained to respond to situations that would make most military units hesitate. Their keen senses had already picked up on the approaching danger, and lo, growls began to emanate from their kennels. Among them was Zeus, Marcus's personal dog and the alpha of the pack. The massive Belgian Malinois stood alert in his kennel, muscles tense and ears forward, reading his handler's energy even from a distance. Zeus had served with Marcus in 3 combat tours, and together they had developed an almost supernatural connection. The dog's military training had made him exceptionally dangerous, a fact that was about to become very relevant. "Sarah, initiate lockdown protocol," Marcus commanded, his voice steady despite the rising tension. Sarah Chen, his head trainer and former Army K9 specialist, immediately moved to the security console. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, activating the facility's defensive measures. Steel shutters began to descend over the windows, and reinforced doors slammed shut throughout the compound. The facility's security system was state-of-the-art, designed by Marcus himself after his return from active duty. He had seen too much combat to leave anything to chance, and the academy had been built with potential threats in mind. Every building was reinforced, every approach covered by cameras, and every exit secured with military-grade locks. But as the vehicles skidded to a stop in front of the main building, Marcus knew that all these precautions might not be enough. Through the security feeds, Marcus watched as men emerged from the vehicles, their movements professional and coordinated. They carried themselves with the confidence of experienced fighters, and their weapons, a mix of automatic rifles and tactical shotguns, suggested they were well funded and well prepared. Their faces were masked, but their body language spoke of military training, albeit crude and unrefined. 10 hostiles, Marcus counted, his trained eye scanning the feeds. Military-style tactical gear, but their formation is sloppy. They're trained, but not special forces. He turned to his team, seeing the mix of concern and determination on their faces. These were not ordinary dog trainers. Each one was a veteran, hand-picked for their combat experience and canine handling expertise. The intruders spread out, taking positions around the main building. Their leader, a tall figure wearing a tactical vest adorned with cartel patches, stepped forward. His voice, heavily accented and filled with arrogance, boomed through the morning air. "Marcus Rodriguez, we know you're in there. Come out now, and we can discuss business like civilized people." Marcus's jaw tightened as he recognized the implications. The cartel's reach had finally extended to his doorstep. He had heard rumors of their attempts to establish networks in the area, but he hadn't expected such a bold move. His mind raced through possibilities, calculating odds and evaluating options with the precision of a combat veteran. Sarah moved to his side, her voice low and steady. "Marcus, we've got movement on the perimeter. They're trying to flank around to the kennels." Her words carried the weight of understanding. If the intruders reached the dogs, they could either harm them or, worse, try to take them. These K9s were more than just animals. They were highly trained military assets, capable of causing significant damage if they fell into the wrong hands. The cartel leader's voice cut through the air again, this time with an edge of impatience. "You train dogs for the police, for the military. Now you will train them for us. We're not asking, Rodriguez. This is a business proposition you can't refuse." Inside the main building, Marcus's team watched the security feeds with growing concern. Tom, Doc Morrison, a former Navy corpsman and the facility's veterinarian, checked his medical kit out of habit. Lisa Ramirez, their intelligence specialist and communication expert, was already establishing secure connections with local law enforcement. James "Ghost" Wilson, their head of security and former Delta Force operator, had positioned himself near the rear entrance, his movements silent. Despite his imposing frame, Marcus's mind flashed back to his last deployment, where he and Zeus had faced similar odds. The memory of that firefight, of the trust between handler and dog that had saved both their lives, strengthened his resolve. These cartel members had no idea what they were walking into. They saw a dog training facility, but what they had actually surrounded was a compound full of elite warriors, both human and canine. The facility's defense systems were designed with multiple layers, each one capable of buying precious time. But Marcus knew they needed more than just defensive measures. He reached for his secure phone, typing out a quick message to a number few people knew existed. Years in special operations had taught him the value of having backup plans, and he had maintained certain connections for precisely this type of situation. Through the cameras, Marcus watched as more cartel members emerged from the vehicles, bringing their total number to 15. They moved with purpose, setting up positions that suggested they intended to breach the building. Their weapons were professional grade, and several carried breaching equipment. This was no simple intimidation attempt. They had come prepared for a fight. The morning sun continued to rise, casting harsh shadows across the training grounds as tension built in the air. Inside the kennels, the dogs remained absolutely silent now, their training kicking in as they sensed the approaching conflict. These weren't ordinary security dogs that would bark at any threat. They were combat-trained specialists, taught to remain quiet until given specific commands. Marcus gathered his team around the central command console, his voice low but commanding. "Listen up. These aren't ordinary criminals. They're cartel enforcers, probably ex-military themselves. They want our dogs and our expertise, and they're not planning to take no for an answer." He paused, looking each team member in the eye. "But they don't know what they're walking into. We're not just trainers, we're veterans, and those aren't just dogs in those kennels." The team nodded, their expressions hardening with determination. They had all seen combat, had all faced impossible odds before. More importantly, they understood the unique advantage they held. Their canine partners were unlike anything the cartel had ever encountered. These dogs were trained for military operations, capable of executing complex tactical maneuvers and responding to situations that would challenge even experienced combat units. Outside, the cartel leader's patience was wearing thin. His voice carried a new edge of threat as he called out again. "You have 5 minutes, Rodriguez. After that, we do this the hard way. And trust me, you don't want to see how hard we can make things." Inside the command center, Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. The cartel thought they were laying siege to a simple training facility. They had no idea they were actually challenging a team of combat veterans and their elite K9 partners. As the morning sun climbed higher in the Arizona sky, casting long shadows across the training grounds, both sides prepared for what was about to become a very different kind of confrontation than either had initially expected. The sound of loading, weapons and tactical gear being adjusted filled the air outside, while inside, Marcus's team moved with quiet efficiency, preparing for what was to come. In the kennels, Zeus and the other dogs remained silent, their training holding as they waited for the commands that would unleash their full capabilities. The stage was set for a confrontation that would prove to these cartel members exactly why you should never threaten a veteran dog trainer and his combat-trained K9s. The tension reached its breaking point as the cartel leader's countdown expired. Without warning, the morning erupted into chaos as multiple explosive charges detonated against the facility's reinforced doors. The blasts echoed across the training grounds, sending shockwaves through the buildings and kicking up clouds of dust and debris. The cartel forces moved in quickly, their weapons raised as they advanced through the smoke. Inside the main building, Marcus's team held their positions, each member falling back on years of combat training. The facility's security systems had already engaged, turning what appeared to be a simple training center into a tactical nightmare for the invaders. Steel shutters covered the windows, reinforced doors blocked major entrances, and carefully positioned cameras gave the defenders a complete view of the enemy's movements. "Contact front," James called out from his position, his voice steady as he tracked the approaching hostiles through his tactical scope. The former Delta operator had positioned himself on the building's second floor, using his elevated vantage point to monitor the cartel's advance. Through his scope, he could see their movements clearly, professional but rushed, suggesting experience but lacking the discipline of proper military training. The cartel forces split into 3 teams, each taking different approaches to the building. Their tactical formation showed planning, but their execution revealed gaps that any experienced combat veteran would notice. They moved too closely together in some places, left blind spots uncovered in others. These were trained fighters, but they weren't special forces, and that difference was about to become crucial. Marcus watched the security feeds intently, his mind racing through combat scenarios. In the kennels, the dogs remained absolutely silent, their military training evident in their disciplined response to the chaos. Zeus, in particular, stood perfectly still in his kennel, his muscles tense and ready, waiting for his handler's command. The bond between Marcus and his dog, forged in the fires of combat, was about to prove its worth once again. "Sarah, initiate Protocol Delta," Marcus commanded, his voice carrying the weight of authority. Sarah nodded, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she activated a series of predetermined defensive measures. Throughout the compound, hidden speakers began emitting high-frequency sounds, inaudible to human ears but crystal clear to the trained K9s. These were specific command frequencies, part of their advanced training protocol. The cartel forces breached the outer perimeter, moving with increasing confidence as they encountered no immediate resistance. Their leader, visible through the security cameras, directed his men with hand signals as they approached the main building. They had brought serious firepower, military-grade weapons, breaching charges, and what appeared to be flashbang grenades. They were prepared for a fight, but they had no idea what kind of fight they were walking into. "Doc, status on the medical supplies?" Marcus asked, knowing that in any conflict, preparation for casualties was essential. The former Navy corpsman checked his equipment one final time, his movements precise and practiced. "All set, boss. Trauma. Kits are ready, and I've got the dog-specific supplies prepped as well." The mention of the dogs brought a slight smile to Marcus's face. These cartel members were about to learn why military K9s were considered force multipliers in combat situations. The first real exchange began when a cartel team attempted to breach one of the side entrances. They placed their charges with professional precision, but as they prepared to detonate, James's voice came through the radio. "Taking the shot." A single suppressed round found its mark, striking the breaching charge and rendering it useless. The cartel team scrambled for cover, suddenly aware that they were dealing with more than simple dog trainers. Lisa monitored the communications, her experience in signals intelligence proving invaluable. "They're switching frequencies," she reported, her fingers dancing across her equipment. "Their commands are getting more urgent. They didn't expect this level of resistance." Through her headset, she could hear the growing frustration and confusion in the cartel members' voices as they realized their initial plan was falling apart. The cartel forces regrouped quickly, adjusting their strategy. Their leader's voice carried across the compound, now tinged with anger and something else, a hint of uncertainty. "You're only making this harder on yourselves. We have you surrounded, and we have more men coming. You can't hold out forever." Marcus keyed his radio, his voice calm and measured. "Team, prepare for close quarters. Remember your training. These guys are used to intimidation tactics. They're not prepared for what we can do." His team acknowledged, with quick, professional responses. Years of military service had taught them the value of clear, concise communication in combat situations. The cartel forces made their next move, launching a coordinated assault on multiple entry points. Flashbang grenades detonated against the building's exterior, but the reinforced windows held. Automatic weapons fire riddled the walls, but the facility's armored construction a feature Marcus had insisted on during its construction, kept the defenders safe. In the kennels, the dogs remained in position, their training holding despite the chaos around them. These weren't ordinary security dogs that would panic at the sound of gunfire. They were combat veterans themselves, trained to operate in the most hostile environments. Through the security feeds, Marcus could see Zeus and the others there, bodies tense but controlled, waiting for the signal. The cartel's frustration became evident as their initial assault failed to gain entry. Their leader's voice crackled over their radios, picked up by Lisa's monitoring equipment. "Send in the heavy weapons. We'll breach through the back wall if we have to." The sound of approaching vehicles confirmed his orders. They were bringing in additional firepower. Marcus's team used the brief lull to solidify their positions. James relocated to a better vantage point, his movements silent despite the tactical gear he carried. Sarah continued monitoring the security systems, making real-time adjustments to stay ahead of the cartel's efforts to breach them. Doc checked his medical supplies one final time, knowing that once the real fighting started, access to the medical station might become limited. The cartel's next assault began with a new intensity. Multiple explosive charges detonated simultaneously, creating a thunderous cascade that shook the entire compound. Through the smoke and debris, their forces advanced with renewed determination, using the chaos as cover. But Marcus and his team had been waiting for this moment. "Execute Protocol Echo," Marcus commanded, and Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard once again. Throughout the compound, hidden defensive measures activated. Strategically placed smoke dispensers filled key corridors with thick, disorienting clouds. The facility's lighting system began a programmed sequence, creating confusion with alternating patterns of light and shadow. The cartel forces pushed forward into this manufactured chaos, but their formation began to break down. Their training hadn't prepared them for this level of sophisticated defense. Through the security feeds, Marcus watched as their coordinated advance deteriorated into smaller, disconnected groups, exactly as he had planned. In the kennels, the dogs picked up on a new set of high-frequency commands. Their training kicked in immediately, their bodies tensing as they prepared for what was to come. These weren't just attack dogs. They were tactical operators, trained to execute complex maneuvers and respond to battlefield conditions with almost human intelligence. The cartel leader's voice betrayed his growing frustration as he barked orders to his men. "Push forward! They're just dog trainers. We have the numbers and the firepower." But even as he spoke, his men were discovering that numbers and firepower weren't everything. The facility's defenses were proving far more sophisticated than anything they had encountered before. Marcus moved to a different monitoring station, his movements quick but controlled. Through the cameras, he could see the cartel forces spreading out, trying to maintain their tactical advantage. But they had made a crucial mistake. In their focus on breaching the building, they had ignored the kennels. They saw the dogs as assets to be seized, not as the immediate threat they were about to become. "Team, prepare for Phase 2, Marcus announced over the secure channel. His voice was steady, carrying the confidence of someone who had been in far worse situations and emerged victorious. His team acknowledged with professional brevity, each member knowing their role in what was about to unfold. The morning sun had risen higher now, its harsh light creating sharp shadows across the training grounds. The facility's external cameras showed the cartel forces regrouping for another assault, their frustration evident in their increasingly aggressive movements. They had expected a quick, easy operation. Instead, they had found themselves engaged in a complex tactical situation against an opponent they had severely underestimated. The first signs that something was terribly wrong came when the Cartel horses approached the kennels. Through the security feeds, Marcus watched as a small team of 3 men moved cautiously toward the seemingly quiet building. The kennels appeared abandoned, with no signs of the elite combat dogs within. The Cartel members, their weapons raised, reached the entrance with growing confidence. That confidence was about to become their undoing. "Execute Protocol Sierra," Marcus commanded softly into his radio. Sarah's fingers danced across the keyboard, initiating a sequence they had practiced countless times. The kennel's reinforced doors slid open silently, and in that instant, the true nature of Marcus's operation revealed itself. Zeus was the first to emerge, his powerful frame moving with lethal grace. Behind him, 11 more combat-trained dogs moved in perfect formation, their military training evident in every calculated step. The Cartel members barely had time to register what was happening. These weren't ordinary guard dogs barking and charging wildly. These were tactical operators moving with precision and purpose. Zeus led the assault, targeting the nearest gunman with a speed that seemed impossible for his size. The massive Belgian Malinois struck like a missile, his attack silent and devastating. The other dogs moved in coordinated pairs, just as they had been trained, cutting off escape routes and neutralizing threats with military efficiency. Through his tactical scope, James watched the scene unfold. "Contact neutralized at the kennels," he reported calmly. "Dogs are performing exactly as trained." The Cartel members who witnessed the attack through their scopes couldn't believe what they were seeing. These dogs moved like ghosts, their attacks coordinated and precise, showing none of the wild aggression they had expected. Inside the main building, Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. "Phase 2 initiated," he announced to his team. "Sarah, begin acoustic disorientation." New sounds filled the compound, carefully selected frequencies designed to disorient human listeners while leaving the dogs unaffected. The Cartel forces found themselves fighting in an environment that seemed to shift and blur around them. The dogs spread out across the compound, using training techniques developed through years of military operations. They moved from cover to cover, using the same tactical principles as human special forces. Zeus and his team had been trained not just to attack, but to control the battlefield, to create chaos within enemy ranks while maintaining perfect discipline themselves. The Cartel leader's voice crackled with panic as he tried to rally his men. "What kind of dogs are these?" he shouted into his radio. "Fall back and regroup. Use the flashbangs." But the flashbangs that would have incapacitated ordinary dogs had no effect on these canine warriors. They had been trained under extreme conditions, conditioned to operate in environments filled with explosions, gunfire, and chaos. Marcus moved through the building with his team, their movements synchronized with their canine partners' attacks. Through the cameras, they could see the Cartel forces breaking formation, their coordinated assault deteriorating into individual struggles for survival. The dogs had completely disrupted their tactical organization, separating the groups and isolating key targets. In one particularly dramatic moment, Zeus demonstrated why he was the alpha of the pack. A Cartel member had managed to set up a defensive position behind an overturned vehicle, his rifle trained on the approach routes. Zeus circled wide, using the terrain features he had trained on countless times, and approached from an impossible angle. The attack was textbook military K9 tactics, swift, silent, and overwhelmingly effective. Sarah maintained her position at the security console, coordinating the facility's defensive systems with the dogs' movements. "Zeus has breached their eastern perimeter," she reported. "The rest of the pack is herding them toward the training grounds." The training grounds, with their specialized obstacles and confined spaces, had become a tactical nightmare for the invaders. Doc watched the feeds with professional interest, noting how the dogs executed their attacks to incapacitate rather than kill. These weren't mindless weapons. They were highly trained military assets, capable of adjusting their level of force to the situation. "Minimal trauma on the targets," he observed. "The dogs are following their training protocols perfectly." Lisa continued monitoring the cartel's communications, which had devolved into chaos. "Their command structure is breaking down," she reported. "They're not used to dealing with this level of tactical K9 deployment." The cartel members' radio chatter was filled with confusion and fear as they faced an enemy they couldn't understand or predict. Marcus moved to a new position, watching as his K9 unit executed maneuvers that would have made any special forces a team proud. The dogs worked in seamless coordination, using techniques developed through years of military experience. They maintained perfect noise discipline, communicated through body language, and moved with a precision that spoke of countless hours of specialized training. Two cartel members tried to make a break for their vehicles, thinking they could escape the compound. They hadn't counted on meeting Athena and Apollo, two German shepherds specifically trained for pursuit and containment. The dogs cut off their escape route, herding them back toward the center of the compound with a level of tactical awareness that seemed almost supernatural. Through the security feeds, Marcus could see the growing realization on the faces of the cartel forces. They had come expecting to find valuable assets they could seize and control. Instead, they had walked into a carefully prepared tactical operation, facing an enemy that combined animal instinct with military precision. Their superior numbers and firepower meant nothing against opponents they couldn't effectively target or engage. The cartel leader's voice had lost its earlier confidence, now tinged with a growing edge of desperation. Fall back to the vehicles." But his orders came too late. The dogs had already cut off their retreat routes, using the compound's layout to trap and isolate different groups of intruders. Years of training in this environment had given the K9 units an enormous tactical advantage. In the main building, James repositioned to cover a new angle, his movements swift and silent. "They're breaking," he reported, watching through his scope as the cartel forces abandoned their tactical positions. "The dogs have them completely rattled." The invaders' military training was falling apart in the face of an enemy they couldn't effectively fight against. Marcus keyed his radio, his voice calm and measured. "All units, maintain pressure. Don't let them regroup." The dogs responded to hidden audio cues, adjusting their positions to keep the cartel forces off balance. This was what they had trained for. Not just attack and defend, but complex tactical operations requiring intelligence and discipline. Zeus led another coordinated assault, targeting a group of cartel members who had tried to establish a defensive position near the compound's entrance. The dog's approach was a masterpiece of military K9 tactics, using cover and concealment, moving only when the enemy's attention was divided, striking with overwhelming force at the perfect moment. The morning Sun cast harsh shadows across the training grounds as the operation continued. The cartel forces found themselves fighting against not just the dogs, but the very environment itself. Every feature of the compound that they had dismissed as simple training equipment became part of an elaborate tactical scenario, with the dogs using their intimate knowledge of the terrain to maximum advantage. Sarah monitored the security systems, making constant adjustments to support the K9 unit's movements. Perimeter sensors show no additional hostile forces approaching. She reported, "We've contained all known threats within the compound." The cartel's reinforcements, if they existed, hadn't arrived, and given the situation inside the compound, that might have been fortunate for them. The dogs continued their coordinated assault, their movements displaying a level of tactical sophistication that went far beyond basic attack training. They used flanking maneuvers, coordinated their attacks to maximize effectiveness, and maintained perfect discipline throughout the operation. This was the difference between ordinary guard dogs and military-trained K9 tactical operators. Marcus watched through the cameras as his years of specialized training played out before him. Each dog moved with purpose and precision, their actions reflecting countless hours of drills and real-world combat experience. These weren't just animals following basic commands. They were combat veterans executing complex tactical operations with near-perfect precision. The cartel forces found themselves completely outmaneuvered, facing an enemy that combined animal instinct with military tactics in ways they had never encountered. Their weapons, their numbers, and their tactical experience meant little against opponents who could move invisibly, strike without warning, and coordinate their attacks with unprecedented precision. Inside the facility's fortified command center, the K9 team monitored their success through multiple camera feeds. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard as she switched between views, tracking the dogs' synchronized movements and the cartel's increasingly chaotic response. The screens showed Zeus and his team systematically dismantling the invaders' operations with military precision, turning what should have been a simple takeover into a tactical nightmare. Team 2 is fully engaged, Marcus announced, watching as another group of combat dogs executed a perfect flanking maneuver. His voice carried the calm authority of someone who had seen far worse situations in combat. Through the monitors, he could see his dogs implementing years of specialized training, their movements precise and purposeful. Each K9 operated with the discipline of a special forces operator, using terrain features and tactical positioning that spoke of countless hours of military drills. Behind the main building, a group of cartel members had attempted to establish a defensive position using overturned equipment as cover. They hadn't counted on facing Titan and Shadow, two German shepherds specifically trained in breach and clear operations. The dogs moved like ghosts through the shadows, their approach completely silent until the moment of contact. The resulting engagement was swift and decisive, leaving the cartel members disarmed and contained. The security feeds showed the current situation in stark detail. The initial cartel force was contained, their members either subdued or isolated in tactically disadvantageous positions. The K9 units moved with continued precision, maintaining control of key areas and preventing any attempted regrouping. But the real challenge was approaching rapidly. Incoming vehicles are 5 minutes out, James reported from his position. They're moving in a tactical formation, maintaining good spacing and coverage. These guys know what they're doing. His voice carried the weight of experience. He had seen similar approaches during his time in Delta Force. Marcus keyed his radio, sending out a series of commands that would reposition his K9 units for the next phase of the operation. The dogs responded immediately, moving to new positions with practiced efficiency. Zeus took point at a critical junction, while other teams established containment positions that would funnel the incoming threat into predetermined engagement zones. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard, making real-time adjustments to the facility's defensive systems. Environmental controls are optimized, she reported. Acoustic deterrents are calibrated for maximum effect on the approach routes. The systems she controlled were military-grade, designed to create conditions that would give their K9 units every possible advantage. Doc moved between stations, checking equipment and ensuring all medical supplies were ready. Trauma kits are prepped, he announced. Both human and K9 emergency response systems are standing by. His experience as a combat medic had taught him to prepare for worst-case scenarios while hoping they wouldn't be necessary. Through the facility's external cameras, the team could see dust clouds rising on the horizon, the first visual sign of the approaching reinforcements. The morning sun cast harsh shadows across the desert landscape, creating a dramatic backdrop for what was about to unfold. Marcus studied the tactical display, his mind working through contingencies and response options. Lisa continued monitoring communications, her expression focused as she worked through the encrypted traffic. They're coordinating their approach with the remaining forces inside, she reported, trying to set up a synchronized assault. Her fingers moved quickly across her equipment, working to stay ahead of the enemy's communications. The K9 units maintained their positions, showing no signs of fatigue or stress. These dogs had been trained for extended operations, their endurance built through years of specialized conditioning. Zeus, from his position at the critical junction, maintained perfect stillness, a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Marcus moved to a different monitoring station, studying the approach vectors of the incoming vehicles. His years of combat experience helped him anticipate their likely tactics, and he began positioning his assets accordingly. Sarah, prepare to initiate sequence Delta 7 on my mark, he commanded. James, maintain eyes on, but do not engage unless absolutely necessary. The tension in the command center was palpable as the team prepared for the next phase of the confrontation. They had successfully handled the initial assault, but this new threat would test the full range of their capabilities. The facilities, defenses, the K9 units training, and the team's combat experience were about to face their greatest challenge. The cartel's reinforcements were now visible on the security cameras, their vehicles modified for combat operations. Heavy weapons were mounted on the backs of the vehicles, and the men inside moved with a level of coordination that suggested serious military training. These weren't ordinary cartel soldiers. They were professionals, and they were coming prepared for a serious fight. The approaching vehicles kicked up clouds of dust as they thundered toward the facility, their engines roaring with menacing intent. Through high-powered optics, Marcus could see that these weren't ordinary cartel gunmen. The men in the vehicles moved with practiced precision, their gear and weapons suggesting serious military background. In the command center, the tactical displays showed the new threat in stark detail. 3 heavily modified trucks carrying what appeared to be elite enforcement units. Marcus keyed his radio, his voice steady as he issued new commands to his K9 teams. Zeus and the other dogs had already repositioned according to their training, taking up strategic points throughout the compound. These weren't just defensive positions. They were carefully chosen ambush points, selected to maximize the dogs' tactical advantages and minimize the effectiveness of the enemy's superior firepower. Contact in 3 minutes, James reported from his overwatch position. Through his scope, he could see the lead vehicle clearly now. They've got mounted weapons. Looks like 50 caliber on the lead truck. These guys came prepared for a fight. His voice carried the calm assessment of someone who had seen similar setups in combat zones around the world. Sarah's fingers danced across her keyboard, making final adjustments to the facility's defensive systems. The compound's capabilities went far beyond what anyone would expect from a dog training center. Hidden speakers were positioned to broadcast specific frequencies that would disorient human attackers while leaving the dogs unaffected. Specialized lighting systems could turn familiar spaces into bewildering mazes of shadow and light. In the kennels area, now transformed into a forward operating position, 2 German shepherds named Delta and Echo maintained perfect stillness. Their military training was evident in their discipline. No movement, no sound, just patient waiting for the perfect moment to strike. These dogs had been specifically trained for vehicle interdiction, a skill that was about to become critically important. Lisa's voice cut through the tactical chatter, her tone urgent but controlled. Their radio traffic is getting more sophisticated. They're using military-grade encryption, but I'm picking up fragments. They know about our K9 units now. They're adapting their approach. Her fingers moved quickly across her communications equipment, working to stay ahead of the enemy's tactical adjustments. The lead vehicle suddenly accelerated, breaking formation as it charged toward the main gate. The driver's aggression suggested confidence in their armored modifications, but Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. "Sarah, initiate pattern Alpha," he commanded. The facility's defensive measures began their carefully choreographed sequence. As the vehicle hit the first checkpoint, hidden systems activated. Specialized strobes created disorienting patterns of light, while acoustic deterrents filled the air with carefully calibrated frequencies. The effect on the approaching forces was immediate. The lead vehicle swerved slightly, its driver momentarily disoriented by the assault on his senses. "They're splitting up," James reported, tracking the other vehicles through his scope. 2 teams trying to flank around the east and west approaches. His position gave him a perfect view of their tactical deployment, and he could see that these men knew what they were doing. They moved with coordination that spoke of serious combat experience. Marcus watched the tactical display, his mind working through scenarios developed through years of military operations. "Time to show them what we've got," he said quietly. "Sarah, release Zeus and Alpha Team." Through the security feeds, he could see his lead dog moving into position, followed by 3 other Belgian Malinois. They moved like shadows, their approach completely silent. The lead vehicle had reached the inner perimeter when Zeus made his move. The massive dog emerged from cover like a ghost, his attack precisely targeted at the vehicle's front tire. His powerful jaws, capable of exerting over 200 pounds of pressure, made short work of the reinforced rubber. The driver fought to maintain control as the vehicle lurched to one side. Almost simultaneously, Delta and Echo launched their own assault on one of the flanking vehicles. Their approach was textbook military K9 tactics, One dog targeted the driver's side, while the other moved to the passenger door. The coordination of their attack would have made any Special Forces team proud. Doc watched the operation through the security feeds, monitoring both human and canine vital signs through advanced sensor systems. All K9 units operating at peak efficiency, he reported. No signs of stress or fatigue. His medical expertise helped ensure that the dogs could maintain their high level of performance throughout extended operations. The cartel forces found themselves in a situation they hadn't anticipated. Their vehicles, despite their armored modifications, were vulnerable to the precisely targeted attacks of the combat-trained dogs. The K9 units moved with a level of tactical sophistication that went far beyond anything they had encountered before. Sarah continued coordinating the facility's defensive systems, timing each sequence to support the dog's movements. Environmental controls at maximum effectiveness, she reported, maintaining optimal conditions for K9 operations. The systems she controlled helped ensure that every advantage went to their four-legged operators. Through the chaos, Marcus could see his years of specialized training paying off. Each dog moved with purpose and precision, their actions reflecting countless hours of drills and real-world experience. These weren't just attack dogs. They were tactical operators executing complex military maneuvers with near-perfect coordination. The second flanking vehicle attempted to provide covering fire for their compromised lead truck, but they hadn't counted on meeting Bravo Team. 4 more dogs, led by a powerful German shepherd named Ranger, emerged from concealed positions. Their attack was synchronized and devastating, targeting the vehicle's vulnerable points with military precision. James tracked the engagement through his scope, providing real-time updates on the enemy's movements. "They're trying to regroup," he reported, "but the dogs have them completely disrupted. Their formation is breaking down." His tactical experience helped him recognize the signs of a coordinated attack falling apart. Inside the command center, Lisa continued monitoring the enemy's communications. "Their radio discipline is deteriorating," she noted. "They're switching to open channels. Sounds like they're calling for additional backup." Her signals intelligence training helped her piece together the enemy's intentions from fragments of intercepted messages. Marcus moved to a different monitoring station, studying the tactical display. The engagement was unfolding exactly as they had trained for, with the K9 units maintaining perfect coordination despite the chaos of combat. "Sarah, prepare for Phase 4, he commanded. "We need to maintain pressure while they're disorganized." The morning sun cast harsh shadows across the battlefield as the operation continued. Through the security feeds, Marcus could see his dogs implementing years of specialized training. Zeus led another coordinated assault, targeting a group of cartel members who had attempted to establish a defensive position near their disabled vehicle. The facility's defensive systems continued their carefully orchestrated sequence, creating an environment that maximized the K9 unit's advantages. Strobes disoriented human targets while leaving the dogs unaffected. Acoustic deterrence made it difficult for the enemy to communicate effectively. Every aspect of the compound had been designed to support this type of operation. In one particularly dramatic moment, Zeus demonstrated why he was the leader of the pack. A cartel member had managed to take up a firing position behind their disabled vehicle, but Zeus approached from an impossible angle, using terrain features and shadows to mask his movement until the last possible moment. The attack was executed with perfect tactical precision. Sarah maintained her position at the security console, coordinating the facility's systems with the dog's movements. "All systems operating at optimal levels," she reported, maintaining tactical advantage in all sectors. Her expertise with the compound's advanced systems helped ensure that every engagement favored their K9 operators. The cartel forces found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't effectively target or engage. Their military training and superior firepower meant little against opponents who could move invisibly, strike without warning, and coordinate their attacks with unprecedented precision. The dog's military training showed in every movement, every attack, and every tactical decision. Marcus watched through the cameras as his years of specialized training played out before him. Each dog moved with purpose and precision, their actions reflecting countless hours of drills and real-world combat experience. These weren't just animals following basic commands, they were combat veterans executing complex tactical operations with near-perfect precision. The tide of battle shifted dramatically as the cartel's reinforcements found themselves completely outmaneuvered by Marcus's K9 units. Through the security feeds, he watched as Zeus led another perfectly coordinated assault, targeting the gunner position on one of the disabled vehicles. The massive Belgian Malinois moved like a shadow, his approach completely silent until the moment of contact. Inside the command center, Sarah monitored multiple tactical displays, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as she coordinated the facility's defensive systems. "All K9 units are maintaining optimal positions," she reported. "Environmental controls are keeping our advantage." The compound's sophisticated systems continued their carefully orchestrated sequence, creating conditions that favored their four-legged operators. James's voice crackled over the radio from his overwatch position. "Multiple hostiles breaking formation," he reported, tracking the enemy's movements through his scope. "They're trying to fall back to defensible positions, but the dogs have them contained." His experience in Delta Force helped him recognize the signs of a tactical operation falling apart. The cartel forces had arrived, expecting to face ordinary security measures and basic guard dogs. Instead, they found themselves engaged with highly trained military K9 units operating in perfectly coordinated teams. Their superior numbers and firepower proved ineffective against opponents who could move invisibly and strike with surgical precision. Lisa continued monitoring enemy communications, her expression focused as she worked through their transmissions. "Their command structure is breaking down," she noted. "Individual units are starting to act independently. They've lost tactical cohesion." Her signals intelligence background helped her interpret the growing chaos in the enemy's ranks. Doc moved between monitoring stations, checking both human and canine vital signs through advanced sensor systems. "All K9 units still operating at peak performance," he reported. "The conditioning is paying off. They're showing no signs of fatigue." His medical expertise helped ensure that both the dogs and their handlers could maintain their high level of performance. Through the facility's external cameras, Marcus watched as Delta and Echo executed another vehicle interdiction operation. The two German Shepherds moved with perfect coordination, one targeting the driver's side while the other approached from the rear. Their attack was a masterpiece of military K9 tactics, demonstrating years of specialized training. The cartel's attempt to establish a defensive perimeter around their disabled vehicles was quickly unraveling. Zeus and his team systematically dismantled their positions, using techniques that would have made any Special Forces unit proud. The dogs moved in coordinated pairs, maintaining perfect noise discipline and executing complex flanking maneuvers. Sarah's fingers flew across her console as she adjusted the facility's defensive measures. "Initiating Pattern Delta," she announced, activating another sequence of environmental controls. Throughout the compound, specialized lighting arrays created disorienting patterns, while acoustic systems broadcast frequencies that affected human targets but left the dogs unimpaired. Marcus keyed his radio, issuing new commands to his K9 teams. "Alpha Team, move to Sector 4. Bravo Team, maintain containment on the eastern approach." The dogs responded immediately, their movements displaying a level of tactical sophistication that went far beyond basic attack training. James tracked another engagement through his scope, providing real-time updates on the enemy's movements. "They're completely disorganized now," he reported. "The dogs have them totally disrupted. Their tactical formation has completely broken down." His combat experience helped him recognize the signs of an enemy force losing cohesion. Sarah maintained her position at the security console, coordinating the facility's systems with the dog's movements. "All defensive measures are functioning optimally," she reported, maintaining tactical advantage across all sectors. Her expertise with the compound's advanced systems helped ensure that every engagement favored their K9 operators. The morning sun continued its climb as the operation reached its decisive phase. Through the cameras, Marcus could see his years of specialized training paying off. Each dog moved with purpose and precision, their actions reflecting the highest levels of military K9 training. The Cartel forces, despite their numbers and firepower, found themselves completely outmatched by an enemy they hadn't been prepared to face. As the tactical situation continued to develop, a new and unexpected element emerged from the chaos. Through the security feeds, Marcus noticed one of the Cartel members moving differently from the others. This individual's movements were more deliberate, more professional, suggesting a level of training beyond that of a typical Cartel enforcer. The man wore tactical gear similar to the others, but his bearing spoke of serious military experience. "James, I need eyes on the target in Sector 7, Marcus commanded, his voice carrying a note of focused intensity. Through his scope, James quickly located the individual in question. "Got him," he confirmed. "You're right, this one's different. His movement patterns suggest Special Forces training, possibly international." The mysterious operative had taken up a position behind one of the disabled vehicles, and unlike his panicked companions, he seemed to be carefully studying the K9 unit's patterns of movement. This level of tactical awareness raised immediate red flags in Marcus's mind. Through years of combat experience, he had learned to recognize when he was dealing with someone who truly understood warfare. Sarah's fingers moved across her keyboard, adjusting the facility's defensive systems to focus on this new threat. "Redirecting surveillance priority," she announced, "getting multiple angles on the target." The security cameras pivoted, providing comprehensive coverage of the operative's position and potential movement routes. Zeus, from his vantage point, near the main building, had also noticed something different about this particular target. The massive Belgian Malinois remained perfectly still, his military training evident in his disciplined response. These dogs weren't just trained to attack, they were taught to recognize and respond to different levels of threat. Lisa's voice cut through the tactical chatter, her tone urgent but controlled. "Boss, I'm picking up some interesting chatter. This guy's using different communication protocols, military grade, but not standard cartel frequencies." Her signals intelligence background helped her recognize the significance of this discovery. "Whatever he is, he's not your typical cartel muscle." Marcus studied the tactical display, his mind working through the implications. The presence of a highly trained operative suggested this wasn't just about taking over a dog training facility. There was something else at play, something that warranted sending in a professional of this caliber. "Doc, status on our K9 units?" Marcus asked, knowing they might need every advantage in dealing with this new threat. "All dogs are operating at optimal levels," Doc reported, checking the biometric data from their tactical vests. "Zeus and Alpha Team are in perfect position for intercept if needed." The mysterious operative made his next move with calculated precision, attempting to establish a new defensive position that would give him better coverage of the facility's main approaches. His understanding of tactical positioning was evident. In every movement, every decision, James tracked the target through his scope, providing continuous updates. "He's good," he observed. "Really good. The way he moves, the way he uses cover. This isn't someone who learned combat from cartel training. Camps." His experience in Delta Force helped him recognize the hallmarks of elite military training. The morning sun cast harsh shadows across the battlefield as this new phase of the operation unfolded. Through the security feeds, Marcus could see his years of specialized training being put to the ultimate test. Each movement, each tactical decision would be crucial in dealing with an opponent of this caliber. Lisa's monitoring equipment picked up another burst of encrypted communications. "He's attempting to coordinate with someone outside the compound," she reported. "The encryption is sophisticated, definitely not cartel standard." Her signals intelligence training helped her recognize the significance of these transmissions. Marcus moved to a different monitoring station, studying the tactical display with intense focus. The situation had evolved far beyond a simple cartel attack. They were now engaged with someone who possessed intimate knowledge of military canine operations, and that changed everything about how they needed to approach this confrontation. Through the cameras, Zeus could be seen adjusting his position, demonstrating why he was the alpha of the pack. The dog's movements showed perfect tactical awareness, countering each of the operative's attempts to create confusion or disruption. This was military canine operations at its highest level. The mysterious operative continued his sophisticated attempts to counter their operations, but he was finding that Marcus's K9 units were far more advanced than he had anticipated. These dogs weren't just trained for basic security. They were combat veterans capable of adapting to and overcoming even the most sophisticated countermeasures. Sarah maintained her position at the security console, ensuring that the facility's defensive systems continued to support their K9 units effectively. "All systems are maintaining optimal performance," she reported. "Countermeasures are being neutralized in real time." Her expertise with the compound's advanced systems helped ensure their tactical advantage remained intact. The mysterious operative's true identity became clear in a moment that changed the entire dynamic of the confrontation. Through the security feeds, Marcus watched as the man removed his tactical mask, revealing a face he hadn't seen in years. Sarah, "Freeze frame and enhance Sector 7, he commanded, his voice tight with recognition. The image on the screen confirmed his suspicion. The elite operator they were facing was none other than Captain Michael "Ghost" Torres, a former Special Forces K9 trainer who had disappeared 3 years ago. "I know him," Marcus announced to his team, his mind racing through memories of joint operations and shared training sessions. He was one of the best military dog handlers in the business before he went dark. The revelation added a new layer of complexity to an already challenging situation. Torres wasn't just any operator. He had helped develop some of the advanced K9 tactics they were currently using. James's voice cracked over the radio, carrying a note of recognition. "Confirmed. That's definitely Torres. We ran operations together in South America." His scope remained trained on the former Special Forces operator, watching as Torres continued to implement sophisticated countermeasures against their K9 units. Lisa quickly pulled up encrypted military files on her screen, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Michael Torres, Captain, Special Forces, specialized in advanced K9 operations and countermeasures, reported missing in action during an operation in Central America 3 years ago. Her voice carried the weight of the intelligence she was uncovering. No confirmed sightings until now. Zeus remained perfectly still in his tactical position, but Marcus could see the dog's intense focus on Torres. The Belgian Malinois had trained alongside Torres years ago, and something in his posture suggested recognition. These dogs didn't forget their training partners, even after years of separation. Sarah adjusted the facility's defensive systems, adapting them to counter Torres's intimate knowledge of their tactics. "Implementing randomized pattern shifts," she reported. "He knows our standard protocols. We need to be unpredictable." The compound's sophisticated systems began creating new, irregular patterns of environmental manipulation. Through the security feeds, Marcus watched as Torres executed another series of precise movements. His understanding of K9 operations was evident in every step, every decision. He wasn't just trying to escape. He was systematically testing their defenses, probing for weaknesses that only someone with his background would recognize. "He's using the old Ghost protocols," James observed from his overwatch position. Those were classified techniques developed for operating against military working dogs. His experience in Delta Force helped him recognize the sophisticated nature of Torres's countermeasures. Doc monitored the dog's vital signs closely, knowing that engaging someone with Torres's expertise would push them to their limits. "K9 units are maintaining discipline," he reported, "but they're showing signs of recognition. These dogs remember him." The biometric data from their tactical vests told a story of heightened awareness and focused attention. Marcus keyed his radio, his voice carrying the authority of someone who understood the full implications of this development. "All units, switch to contingency protocols. He knows our standard operating procedures. We need to adapt." The K9 teams responded immediately, beginning to implement variations on their trained responses. Torres's voice suddenly came through the facility's communication system, having somehow gained access to their frequency. "Hello, Marcus. Your dogs are looking good. Still running the old patterns, I see." His tone was professional, almost friendly, but carried an undertone of something darker. "But you're not the only one who's learned new tricks." Lisa's monitoring equipment picked up a surge of encrypted communications. "He's broadcasting on multiple frequencies," she reported. "The encryption is evolving. He's using protocols that weren't in his old playbook. Her signals intelligence training helped her recognize that Torres had developed new capabilities during his years off the grid. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard, working to counter Torres's electronic intrusion. "He's trying to access our environmental controls," she announced, implementing security lockouts and shifting to backup systems. The facility's defensive measures began adapting to this new threat, creating layers of protection against Torres's sophisticated approach. Through the cameras, Marcus watched as Torres initiated another series of tactical movements. Each step was calculated, each position chosen with perfect understanding of K9 operations. He was using his knowledge of their training methods to stay just ahead of their responses, demonstrating why he had been considered one of the best in the business. James maintained his overwatch position, tracking Torres's movements through his scope. "He's setting up for something big," he reported. "These movements aren't just evasive, he's creating a specific tactical scenario." His experience helped him recognize that Torres was implementing a larger strategy. Zeus and the other dogs continued their disciplined response, but their movements showed subtle signs of adjustment. These weren't just trained responses anymore. They were actively adapting to counter an opponent who understood their capabilities intimately. Marcus studied the tactical display, his mind working through the implications of Torres's presence. This wasn't just about the cartel anymore. Torres's involvement suggested something much more sophisticated was at play. His former colleague had always been 3 steps ahead in training scenarios, and now that tactical genius was being turned against them. Sarah continued coordinating the facility's defensive systems, creating new patterns to counter Torres's expertise. "Environmental controls are now operating on randomized sequences," she reported. "He won't be able to predict our next configuration." The compound's sophisticated systems were being pushed to their limits, adapting to counter an opponent who helped design their original protocols. Marcus studied the tactical display with growing concern. Torres had helped design some of the facility's original security measures, but his interest in the underground infrastructure suggested something more sinister. "Sarah, run a deep scan of all subsurface sensors. Something's not right." The results of the scan confirmed Marcus's suspicions. Hidden beneath the visible chaos of the confrontation, sophisticated scanning equipment was mapping the facility's underground structure. Torres wasn't just a turned operative working for the cartel. He was after something specific, something hidden beneath the training compound. "Boss, movement at the perimeter," James reported suddenly. "Small drones, barely visible, deploying. Some kind of sensing equipment." His scope had caught the glint of metal as tiny automated devices moved into position around the facility's boundaries. "This is a professional surveillance operation disguised as a cartel attack." Doc's voice carried a note of concern as he monitored the K9 unit's reactions. "The dogs are picking up on something we can't detect," he reported. "Their behavior patterns suggest they're sensing some kind of hidden threat." The biometric data from their tactical vests showed elevated awareness levels that couldn't be explained by the visible situation alone. Through the security feeds, Marcus watched as Torres executed another series of precise movements. Each position he took, each tactical decision he made, was designed to gather specific data about the facility's hidden infrastructure. The cartel attack had been elaborate misdirection, a cover for a much more sophisticated intelligence operation. Sarah, continued adjusting the facility's defensive systems, but now with a new purpose. Implementing electromagnetic countermeasures, she announced, trying to disrupt whatever scanning equipment he's using. The compound's sophisticated systems began emitting signals designed to interfere with surveillance devices. Lisa's monitoring equipment detected another layer of encrypted communications. He's transmitting data packets between positions, she reported. The cartel's radio traffic was just noise. This is the real operation. Her signals intelligence training helped her identify the true nature of Torres's communications. The morning sun cast strange shadows as Torres continued his methodical survey of the facility. Through the cameras, Marcus could see his former colleague moving with deliberate precision, each step part of a carefully choreographed data-gathering operation. The tactical confrontation had become a complex game of technological cat and mouse. James maintained his overwatch position, providing crucial updates on Torres's activities. He's placing some kind of markers at specific points, he reported. Probably reference points for whatever scanning operation he's running. His combat experience helped him recognize the sophisticated nature of the surveillance technique. Zeus and the other dogs continued their disciplined response, but their attention was increasingly focused on the areas Torres was mapping. Their military training had taught them to recognize and respond to unusual threats, and something about this operation had triggered their advanced threat detection capabilities. Marcus moved between monitoring stations, his mind working through the implications of what they were discovering. The facility had been built on the site of an old military installation, and certain aspects of its infrastructure had been classified. Torres's interest in these hidden systems suggested he was working for someone with high-level knowledge of the site's history. Sarah's fingers danced across her keyboard as she implemented new security protocols. Detecting attempted access to deep-level security systems, she reported. He's trying to reach something in the old military networks. The compound's defensive measures began adapting to protect not just physical security, but digital assets as well. Doc monitored the dogs' reactions closely, noting how their behavior patterns had shifted. They're not just tracking Torres anymore, he reported. Something about this operation is triggering their specialized threat detection training. The biometric data showed the K9 units operating in a mode typically reserved for complex military threats. Torres's voice came through the communication system again, this time with a different tone. You've upgraded the place nicely, Marcus. But did you ever wonder why they chose this location for a K9 training facility? Why they needed someone with a particular skill set? His words carried the weight of hidden knowledge, suggesting deeper layers to the facility's purpose. Lisa's equipment picked up a surge of encrypted data transmission. He's accessed something, she reported urgently. Whatever he was looking for, he's found it. Her monitors showed a massive data transfer occurring through sophisticated channels that bypassed normal security protocols. Marcus studied the tactical display with growing understanding. The facility's location, its sophisticated security systems, the classified infrastructure. It had all been part of something bigger. Torres wasn't just conducting surveillance. He was executing a highly sophisticated intelligence-gathering operation. James tracked another series of movements through his scope, his voice tense with recognition. Boss, those markers he's placing, they're forming a specific pattern. It matches old military grid coordinates. His experience in Delta Force helped him recognize the significance of the geometric arrangement. The facility's defensive systems continued their evolution, but now they were fighting a different kind of battle. Rather than just containing a tactical threat, they were working to protect hidden systems and classified data that even Marcus hadn't known existed. Sarah maintained her position at the security console, her expertise being pushed to new limits. Implementing quantum encryption protocols, she reported, trying to lock down whatever systems he's accessing. The compound's advanced security measures revealed layers of sophistication that went far beyond normal training facility requirements. Through the cameras, Marcus watched as his former colleague continued his methodical operation. Each movement, each data point gathered, was part of a larger mission that had been years in the planning. The cartel attack, the sophisticated countermeasures, even Torres's apparent defection, all had been carefully orchestrated to access something hidden beneath the surface of the training facility. Zeus remained focused on Torres's movements, but the dog's behavior suggested he was responding to more than just the visible threat. The Belgian Malinois' military training had included specialized protocols for detecting and responding to sophisticated technical threats, and something about this operation had triggered those advanced capabilities. The morning light revealed new details as Torres's true mission became clearer. The markers he had placed formed a precise geometric pattern, outlining something beneath the facility that didn't appear on any official blueprints. The training compound had been built on top of something important, something classified, and Torres was here to uncover its secrets. The full scope of Torres's operation crystallized in a moment of sudden clarity as Marcus studied the geometric pattern formed by the surveillance markers. Through years of military service, he had seen similar configurations before. They were typically used to map classified underground facilities. The realization hit him like a physical force. The K9 training compound had been deliberately positioned. Above something far more significant, Sarah overlay the marker pattern with the original military site plans, Marcus commanded, his voice tight with urgency. The tactical display shifted, revealing a perfect alignment between Torres's markers and a previously hidden layer of infrastructure. This wasn't just about stealing training secrets or compromising security. Torres was after something that had been buried beneath the facility decades ago. James's voice crackled over the radio from his overwatch position. "Boss, you need to see this. The drones are converging on specific points. They're forming a three-dimensional grid." Through his scope, he could track the precise movements of the small surveillance devices. Whatever's down there, it's big. Lisa's monitoring equipment suddenly lit up with new activity. Multiple signals detected at subsurface levels, she reported, her fingers flying across her keyboard. The frequencies match old military communication protocols. Something down there is active and responding to his probes. Her signals intelligence background helped her recognize the significance of these buried transmissions. Zeus had taken up a position near one of Torres's markers, his behavior showing signs of his specialized training. The Belgian Malinois wasn't just tracking a threat. He was responding to something his enhanced senses had detected beneath the surface. These dogs had been trained to recognize signs of hidden military installations, and something was triggering those protocols. Torres's Voice came through the communication system again, carrying a note of satisfaction. You never wondered why they insisted on such sophisticated security for a dog training facility? Why they needed handlers with our specific combat experience? His words confirmed Marcus's growing suspicions about the facility's true purpose. Sarah continued adjusting the compound's defensive systems, but now with a deeper understanding of what they were protecting. The old military networks are showing signs of activation, she reported. Something in the subsurface infrastructure is powering up. The facility's security systems revealed layers of complexity that went far beyond normal training operations. Through the security feeds, Marcus watched as Torres executed another series of precise movements. Each position he took corresponded to specific points on the hidden grid, his actions suggesting intimate knowledge of whatever lay beneath the compound. The Cartel attack had been elaborate theater, designed to mask a highly sophisticated intelligence. Operation Doc monitored the K9 unit's responses closely, noting significant changes in their behavior patterns. The dogs are picking up on electromagnetic anomalies, he reported, studying their biometric data. Their training for detecting hidden military installations is being triggered across the board. These weren't just random reactions. The dogs were responding to specific signatures they had been trained to recognize. The morning sun cast long shadows across the compound as Torres's true mission unfolded. The sophisticated scanning equipment he had deployed was mapping something vast beneath the surface, a complex of tunnels and chambers that didn't appear on any official documentation. The K9 training facility had been built here specifically to provide cover for something far more classified. Multiple subsurface contacts, Lisa announced suddenly, her monitoring equipment detecting new signals. The patterns suggest some kind of automated security system coming online. Her intelligence training helped her recognize that they were dealing with advanced military technology that had laid dormant for years. Marcus moved between monitoring stations, his mind racing through years of classified briefings and hidden protocols. The facility's location, its sophisticated security systems, the requirement for handlers with special operations experience. Everything pointed to a deeper purpose that had been concealed even from those who worked there. James maintained his overwatch position, providing crucial updates as the situation evolved. The drones are emitting some kind of scanning pulse, he reported. They're mapping something big. Looks like multiple levels of underground infrastructure. His combat experience helped him recognize the military significance of what they were uncovering. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard as she worked to counter Torres's technical intrusion. Implementing quantum encryption protocols, she announced, trying to protect whatever systems he's accessing down there. The compound's defensive measures revealed capabilities that went far beyond normal security requirements. Zeus and the other dogs continued their disciplined response, but their attention was increasingly focused on specific points within Torres's geometric pattern. Their military training had included protocols for detecting and responding to hidden installations, and something about this operation had triggered those advanced capabilities. Torres's next transmission carried a hint of revelation. Did you think they chose this location randomly? That they needed elite K9 units just for basic security training? His words confirmed that the facility's true purpose had been carefully concealed beneath layers of misdirection and classified protocols. Lisa's equipment detected another surge of encrypted data. "He's accessing deeper levels of the system," she reported urgently. "Whatever's down there, it's responding to his commands." Her monitors showed sophisticated handshake protocols being executed between Torres's equipment and the buried infrastructure. Marcus studied the tactical display with growing understanding. The facility hadn't just been built on an old military site. It had been specifically designed to maintain and protect something of vital importance. Torres wasn't just conducting surveillance. He was executing a carefully planned operation to access classified systems that had been hidden for decades. Through the security feeds, the team watched as Torres's markers began emitting synchronized pulses of energy. These weren't simple reference points. They were sophisticated technical probes designed to interface with buried military systems. The entire operation had been meticulously planned to access something that had been deliberately forgotten. Sarah maintained her position at the security console, her expertise being pushed to new limits. "The subsurface systems are showing signs of reactivation," she reported. "Whatever's down there, it's been in standby mode for years." The compound's advanced security measures were revealing layers of sophistication that went far beyond normal. Training facility requirements. Doc's voice carried a note of professional concern as he monitored the K9 unit's reactions. "The dogs are responding to specific frequencies," he reported. "Their training for detecting hidden military installations is being triggered in a coordinated pattern." The biometric data showed the dogs operating in modes typically reserved for specialized military operations. James tracked another series of movements through his scope, his voice tense with recognition. "Those aren't just markers he's placing, they're some kind of interface devices. They're creating a direct connection with whatever's buried down there." His experience in Delta Force helped him recognize the sophisticated nature of the technology being deployed. The facility's defensive systems continued their evolution, but now they were fighting a different kind of battle. Rather than just containing a tactical threat, they were working to protect classified systems that had been hidden beneath layers of secrecy and misdirection. Torres's methodical operation had revealed something that had been carefully concealed. The K9 training facility was merely the surface layer of a much more significant installation. The sophisticated security systems, the requirement for handlers with special operations experience, even the specialized training protocols for the dogs, all had been designed to protect something of vital importance. Marcus moved to a different monitoring station, studying the emerging pattern with growing concern. The facility's location had been chosen for a specific purpose, and Torres's operation was methodically peeling back layers of security that had been in place for decades. Whatever lay beneath the surface, it was significant enough to warrant this level of protection and sophisticated enough to require handlers with advanced military experience. The morning light revealed new details as Torres's true mission became clearer. The markers he had placed formed a precise pattern that aligned perfectly with hidden infrastructure beneath the facility. The training compound hadn't just been built on top of something important. It had been specifically designed to maintain and protect classified systems that had been deliberately concealed from public view. The confrontation reached its climax as Torres initiated what appeared to be the final phase of his operation. Through the security feeds, Marcus watched as the underground systems began responding to his former colleagues' sophisticated probing. The markers Torres had placed suddenly pulsed with increased energy, creating a visible grid of light that mapped something massive beneath the facility's surface. Multiple subsurface signatures activating, Lisa reported urgently, her monitoring equipment detecting a surge of activity. Whatever's down there, it's powering up completely. Her screens showed cascading waves of energy signatures emanating from deep beneath the compound, suggesting the activation of long-dormant military systems. James maintained his overwatch position, providing crucial updates as the situation evolved. "Boss, the ground is actually vibrating near his marker points. Something big is happening down there." Through his scope, he could see subtle changes in the terrain as hidden machinery came to life. "This is way beyond anything we were briefed on." Zeus's behavior had changed dramatically, his military training responding to the activation of the buried systems. The Belgian Malinois moved with focused intensity, following patterns that corresponded perfectly with the underground energy signatures. These weren't random movements. The dog was responding to specific protocols that had been embedded in his advanced training. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard as she tried to maintain control of the facility's security systems. "The old military networks are fully active now," she reported. "I'm detecting automated defense protocols that weren't in any of our briefings." The compound's sophisticated systems were revealing capabilities that went far beyond normal security operations. Torres's voice came through the communication system, carrying a tone of triumph. "Do you understand now, Marcus? Why they needed handlers with our background? This facility wasn't built to train dogs. It was built to guard something they wanted everyone to forget." His words confirmed the facility's true purpose as a cover for classified military infrastructure. Through the security feeds, Marcus watched as sections of the compound's ground began to shift subtly. Hidden access points, concealed beneath years of careful camouflage, were responding to Torres's sophisticated probing. The K9 training facility had been deliberately designed to hide these access points in plain sight. Doc monitored the dog's reactions closely, noting their coordinated response to the underground activation. "Their specialized training is kicking in across the board," he reported. "These aren't just security protocols, they're responding to specific military signatures." The biometric data showed the K9 units operating in highly specialized modes that had been programmed for exactly this type of situation. Lisa's equipment detected another surge of encrypted communications. "He's established direct contact with the subsurface systems," she announced. "The protocols he's using, they're decades old but incredibly sophisticated." Her signals intelligence background helped her recognize that they were dealing with classified military technology that had been far ahead of its time. The morning sun cast strange shadows as hidden mechanisms began to move beneath the facility's surface. Torres's operation had triggered something that had laid dormant for years, and now the true nature of the installation was revealing itself. The K9 training compound had been merely the surface layer of a much larger military complex. Marcus moved between monitoring stations, his mind racing through implications. "Sarah, initiate full-spectrum containment," he commanded. "Whatever's down there, we can't let it be compromised." The facility's defensive systems responded immediately, revealing layers of sophisticated security measures that had been hidden even from those who worked there. James tracked Torres's movements through his scope, providing tactical updates. He's accessing some kind of control panel that wasn't there before, he reported. The ground just opened up and revealed it. This whole place is full of hidden systems. His combat experience helped him recognize the military significance of what they were witnessing. Zeus led the other dogs in a coordinated response to the underground activation. Their movements showed evidence of training that went far beyond normal canine operations. These dogs had been specifically prepared for this type of situation. Their capabilities matched perfectly to the facility's true purpose. Torres's operation had revealed something that had been carefully hidden from public view. The sophisticated security systems, the requirement for handlers with special operations experience, even the specialized training protocols for the dogs, all had been designed to protect and monitor classified military infrastructure that predated the training facility. Sarah maintained her position at the security console, her expertise being pushed to new limits. The subsurface systems are showing signs of complete reactivation, she reported. Whatever's down there, it's been waiting for some kind of specific signal. The compound's advanced security measures were responding to protocols that had been embedded decades ago. Doc's voice carried a note of amazement as he monitored the K9 unit's reactions. "The dogs are following patterns we never trained them for," he reported. These responses must have been programmed into their advanced protocols from the beginning. The biometric data showed the dogs operating with a level of sophistication that went beyond their normal capabilities. The facility's defensive systems continued their evolution, but now they were fighting a different kind of battle. Rather than just containing a tactical threat, they were working to protect classified military infrastructure that had been deliberately concealed beneath layers of secrecy and misdirection. Marcus studied the tactical display, watching as more hidden systems came online. The facility's location had been chosen for a specific purpose, and Torres's operation was methodically revealing layers of security that had been in place for decades. Whatever lay beneath the surface was significant, enough to warrant this level of protection. Lisa's monitoring equipment detected new patterns in the underground activation. "These signatures match old Cold War protocols," she reported. "Whatever's down there, it was part of something much bigger." Her intelligence training helped her recognize the historical significance of what they were uncovering. Torres is next. Transmission carried a hint of urgency. "You don't have much time, Marcus. Once these systems fully activate, there's no going back. Help me contain this before it's too late." His words suggested that even he hadn't anticipated the full scope of what his operation would unleash. The morning light revealed new details as more hidden systems activated. The markers Torres had placed formed a precise pattern that aligned perfectly with sophisticated military infrastructure beneath the facility. The training compound hadn't just been built on top of something important. It had been specifically designed to maintain and protect classified systems that had been deliberately hidden from public view. James maintained his tactical position, providing crucial updates as the situation evolved. "The ground is shifting in a geometric pattern," he reported. "Whatever's down there, it's big and it's organized." His combat experience helped him recognize that they were dealing with sophisticated military engineering that had been decades ahead of its time. Zeus and the other dogs continued their coordinated response, their movements showing evidence of training that had been embedded in their protocols from the beginning. These weren't just security dogs. They were part of a sophisticated system designed to monitor and protect classified military infrastructure. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard as she worked to contain the spreading activation. "The subsurface systems are linking together," she reported. "They're forming some kind of network that wasn't in any of our briefings." The compound's defensive measures revealed capabilities that went far beyond normal security requirements. Through the security feeds, Marcus watched as Torres executed another series of precise commands. Each action triggered new responses from the buried systems, revealing layers of sophisticated military technology that had been carefully concealed beneath the surface of the training facility. The confrontation had evolved far beyond a simple security breach. Torres's operation had revealed something that had been deliberately forgotten, a classified military installation that had been hidden beneath layers of secrecy and misdirection. The K9 training facility had been merely the surface layer of something far more significant. The morning sun cast long shadows across the now quiet facility as federal agents swarmed the compound. The hidden military installation had been secured, its secrets preserved for now. Torres was in custody, his sophisticated operation thwarted by the very K9 units he had helped train. The cartel forces had been completely subdued, never realizing they were merely pawns in a much larger game. Marcus stood with Zeus by his side, watching as government officials began the process of containing and classifying everything that had been uncovered. The Belgian Malinois remained alert, his military training evident in his continued vigilance. The facility would remain a K9 training center, but now with an added layer of purpose, protecting the classified infrastructure that lay beneath. The truth about the facility's dual purpose would remain classified, known only to those with the highest security clearances. The K9 units had proven their worth not just as trained military dogs, but as sophisticated guardians of secrets that needed to remain hidden. Torres's attempt to expose what lay beneath the surface had instead demonstrated why such secrets needed protection in the first place. Sarah, Lisa, James, and Doc gathered their equipment, knowing their role in protecting. The facility's secrets had only begun. The sophisticated systems they had helped maintain would continue their silent watch, with the elite K9 units serving as the perfect cover for something far more significant. As the dust settled on the extraordinary events of that morning, one thing became clear. The combination of highly trained military dogs and skilled veteran handlers had created something unique. The facility would continue its mission, training exceptional K9 units while guarding its deeper purpose. If you enjoyed this intense story about elite military K9s and their veteran handlers facing off against sophisticated threats, make sure to hit that subscribe button. On my channel, you'll find more thrilling stories that dive deep into the world of military working dogs, special operations, and the unbreakable bond between handlers and their four-legged partners. Each week, we explore new tales of courage, tactical expertise, and the amazing capabilities of trained military K9s. Don't miss out on future stories. Subscribe now and join our growing community of military and K9 enthusiasts. Hit that notification bell to stay updated on the latest uploads.